Welcome back to DASAR. My name is Darshan Doshi, and I have an awesome guest with me, my colleague from Adeption, Garrett Gatlin. Garrett heads Product Studio at Adeption, and Adeption is a SaaS platform that is used by millions of business leaders to be better versions of themselves. It's in the L&D space that has been growing rapidly over the last few years, and Garrett has been a critical part in designing the experiences, the programs, and creating an impactful program for participants of Adeption programs. So Garrett, welcome to DASAR.
Thanks, Darshan, and thanks for the intro. And I'll do my best. So excited to connect today.
Awesome. So first things first, what is user design, and what are the top maybe few frameworks, 2 or 3 frameworks that you use or have come across for conducting program experience design?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good starting point. One of the, I think, things to actually start with is kind of defining sort of 2 buckets in this space broadly. There's experience design, and then there's user experience design. So experience design XD, we'll call it, and then user experience design is UXD. And I think it's helpful to start here because it helps define not only the work that we're doing currently, but it also defines sort of broad buckets of work that are happening in the design and creative space with respect to technology in particular. So the way I sort of think about the 2 is experience design XD, which is the work that we do, that I've spent my sort of life's work doing over the last decade plus, is in the experience design space, the XD space, and broadly define that as actually the broader category of the 2. So XD is really looking at how do we design experiences that create positive human outcomes? How do we create feelings and emotions? How do we create transformation for people? And really, XD, experience design, is it's quite complicated to get at that when we're talking about transformation and human development and feelings and emotions. And it's this very broad interdisciplinary work. UXD, user experience design, is often more specific with respect to technology and human interaction with different interfaces. And typically UXD is going to be focused on task for a user or usability of a particular platform of technology. So it's not to say one is better than the other. And often in our work, we intersect with UXD, but I think that's actually a really good starting point, is defining the 2 separately. So UXD being a little more specific, focused on usability, and then experience design being the broader of the disciplines, focusing on positive human outcomes, feelings, emotions, transformation, experiences. It's still, I think, even an emerging field too, in my observation, and having played in the space for the last 10 years. I don't know that it's fully sort of formed, but that's emerging, and that's been emerging over the last couple of decades. And really looking at how organizations have shifted as we look at sort of the industrial economy, moving from service economy into experience economy is what some would call this, over the last couple of decades. And that's how we as end users, as consumers of products and brands, have an experience with a brand or with a product. And it sort of transcends the usability of the product to our emotional state, the feeling of transformation that creates. And probably one of the biggest ways to kind of crystallize this at an individual level is to think about one of your favorite brands or businesses that you frequent. So this could be anything. I mean, this could be a restaurant that you love. This could be a retail store. This could be, product company where you buy all of your digital equipment. It could be anything. So for me, one of my favorite brands that I'm quite loyal to is Patagonia. They're an outdoor retail brand. And I'm based here in Colorado in the US. I love all things outdoors. Love in particular trail running, skiing, cycling, and I love Patagonia as a brand. Love their products. And at a fundamental level, their products are impeccably designed, beautifully designed, very usable, provide the perfect function for the stuff that I like to do outdoors. There's a saying in sort of as seasons ebb and flow, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad gear. Patagonia makes great gear to enable you sort of outdoors all year long. But for me, the reason that I'm brand loyal is actually it sort of transcends just the product. That's the starting point. But as a brand, I deeply resonate with Patagonia and the work that they do at sort of a global level. They're strong proponents for preserving and shifting sort of the direction of our global climate right now. And how do we preserve this place that we all call home? They do that through various channels. They put out really compelling stories and content that speaks to me at sort of a personal and emotional level. And so it's that experience that ties me beyond just their product set. And it also goes to their experience of their customer service. They have free lifetime repairs on everything that I purchase. You can return anything if it doesn't work at any point. There's no cap or no limit. And so it's these different aspects of the experience of their product and their brand that makes me love Patagonia. And I'm fanboying over this organization. You should buy their products. I think they're great, not sponsored. But that's probably the best example, I think, is to think about a product or brand or an organization that you deeply resonate with, to crystallize what is the experience that's created. And oftentimes nowadays, that's created intentionally with professionals in the space of experience design.
I'm curious to learn how you got into experience design, and how did you learn, or how did you pick up, and what have you done over the last maybe decade or so in this field?
Yeah, I sort of fell into it, to be honest. And I'm so glad I did, because it's been the ride of my life from a professional standpoint. So when I was in college, I was studying both at an undergrad and then ultimately at a graduate level. I was studying in communication, was sort of the basis of my academic training, if you will. And at that stage in my life, and sort of just getting into career, I found this knack for and a passion around communication, which kind of spans, the whole fabric of our society. And one of the opportunities that was presented to me at the time was this idea of it was a youth organization, a nonprofit here in the United States that was just sort of kicking off. And it was looking at a lot of the work that I do now, but in a different context. And it was looking at how do we help young people discover who they are, maximize their potential, catalyze their life and their career at an early age, and set them on a trajectory of success. And so I was in college when this opportunity presented itself, and it was just at this tiny sort of idea. It was at the inception of an idea of how could we do this at a national scale here in the United States and impact. The vision was to impact thousands and thousands of young people with this program. And so I was studying, again, communication. I had this passion and interest of communicating these ideas of human development and transformation. And so it just seemed like this perfect opportunity to jump into this youth nonprofit space. And I have to say that was really, I think, what sparked and propelled me off into all of the things that I've done since from an experience design perspective. And back then, I didn't even know, I wouldn't have called it experience design. It was, I wouldn't have formed that. But looking back, that's really what the work was. And I think as we've seen over the last, to your point, 10, 20 years, this has really started to emerge and sort of formalize and take shape. So what we did with this nonprofit is we looked at how do we create this outcome for these young people? How do we create in a high school or this strong sense of identity and purpose. How do we create this sense of self-confidence in who they are and this vision for who they can become in the future? All of which is quite complicated stuff. Like there's not exactly a magic recipe of how do you create that in someone. In what we were going to do is in 2.5 hours. So we're hosting these live events, these experiences. So this is where the experience aspect starts to take shape. How do we do that in the span of 2.5 hours? So what we did is, with that outcome in mind, we started creating and designing what that experience looks like. And so in the process of doing this over 8 years, really started to kind of refine and learn the process of experience design, but through a hands-on approach and without sort of knowing that that's actually what we were doing. So it was with this in mind, with the outcome in mind, that we started trying to understand the in our case, the youth or the user of this experience. Where are they currently at? How do we understand their world? How do we think then about moving them to this future ideal state? And what are the different ideas that we can come up with that are going to create that sort of experience and that emotional journey in a 2.5 hour period of time? So we designed really powerful experiences that included everything from stage and set design and lighting to, curating the music at every single point, so that the sound that was going to be coming from the speakers needed to be exactly sort of the emotional state that we wanted the audience to feel. We curated really powerful stories that were both high and low throughout the event to kind of create that connection with the audience. We had live music that was performed. We had dance and drama at various events. We had film that was produced. We had expert sort of panel discussions. We had really fun things in there as well. So we designed in, giveaways and little like on the spot competitions, and we had t-shirt cannons and lasers and all sorts of fun stuff that was, at kind of a surface level could be like, well, you're just trying to design in all this really cool, fun stuff, which it was. But every piece that we ever put inside of a live event was there for a reason. So from that really kind of, for me, started to crystallize this passion for experiences of human transformation. And that emerged as kind of this, over the last 10, 15 years now, this kind of experience design space that I find myself sort of right in the middle of and loving every minute of it, because it's creating those outcomes for people. And we saw that with, 50,000 plus young people in that period of time with this organization. And then I moved on and started doing work in higher education and working with students there, and then faculty and staff and consulting, and then, evolving into technology now. But the thread has been for me how to create these really powerful transformative moments for people across generation.
Brilliant. How do you build confidence? How do you do that in 2.5 hours? And then the attention to detail, which just you kind of mentioned, was just absolutely brilliant. And I see that transition today in Adeption experiences that you're creating as well. The level of detail and the curation that you provide there is just amazing. Before we get into Adeption, now some of our audience members know that they need to create experiences, but they don't know how. So any starting points, any how-to guides, frameworks that you can walk us through and say, this is how I would do it if I were you?
Yeah. So I think the simplest place to start is actually a design thinking framework. So if you just Google design thinking, you'll get a million resources on this framework, but it's very simple, and I'll kind of walk you through step by step. And this is something I've used for, again, sort of all the bodies of work that I've been involved in, but it's broadly applicable. So the work came out of Stanford. There's a number of great books and articles on this. One of Stanford's most popular courses is around this concept of design thinking now. And the inception of the concept and the framework was actually to help designers problem solve very complex challenges, what they call wicked problems, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So a wicked problem can't really be solved with math or engineering. There's no, 1 + 1 = 2. It's much more complicated than that. And so from an experience standpoint, I would say the same thing applies. An experience is a very wicked problem in that you're wanting to create, right? You're wanting to create an emotion or a feeling or some transformative but kind of nebulous outcome. And that's really wicked. There's just no one size fits all approach to it. So the design thinking framework, really simple. It's 5 pieces of the process. So the first is to empathize with the people that you're serving, your end user, your customer, the people that engage with your brand, your product, your service. Empathize with that audience. And by empathize, I mean, try to get an understanding of where are they currently at. So what are the things that they're thinking, feeling, saying, doing? What's their current reality right now? And by stepping into sort of the shoes of the user, before you get into any ideas or brainstorming an experience, you get really clear on who it is you're actually serving. And I've been part of a couple of design projects previously in a couple of different contexts where teams want to rush straight to just designing the thing that you're trying to make and ultimately deploying that, but then it doesn't stick because we sort of miss that first step of getting understanding. So empathy is the first step, I would say. And that's part of the framework. Second one is to define then the problem that you're solving, the outcome you're trying to create. So thinking about, in an experience context, your current state, and then the future state of what is the set of feelings, emotions, outcomes, positive human outcomes that you want your audience to feel off the back of this experience. So defining, getting really clear, crystal clear on what is that outcome you're trying to initiate. So those are the first 2 and probably the most important steps, and the ones that are easily missed because it's frankly, I mean, can be fun and engage, exciting just to get right into brainstorming, which is the next step, which is they call ideating. So that's brainstorming ideas, getting all these, different sort of thoughts into a bucket and really diverging your thinking. So there's no wrong idea. You try to go as wide as possible. The craziest ideas, get them all in there. And those ideas, again, I think from an experience design perspective can depend on your audience, right? So it's I would say experience design is a very interdisciplinary field. So the way we design experiences, it's everything from various forms of content and creative production, writing, film. We also think about interaction with the end user. So there's visual design is in there. So there's lots of different sort of sub skill sets that sit underneath that. So it's really thinking about, for your audience, what are the different ideas that we can throw into the bucket here. From there, then we start converging. So that's the third step. So empathize, define, ideate. The next step is to prototype. So let's actually mock something up, build something. Let's go for an MVP. You can, one approach here, if you really want to refine for your audience, refine the approach, you could do an A/B test. So maybe you have 2 front runners in terms of experience designs. You could do an A/B test with sort of subset of testers, which is that final phase, which is testing. So getting feedback before you, lock the whole thing down and go to deploy to your whole audience. So those are the design thinking steps. Again, you can Google that, and there's a ton of free resources. Stanford has a ton of free resources on the concept, but that's probably the starting point, I would say, if you're thinking about creating experiences for your brand, your product, your business, using that as the framework.
Awesome. Thanks for walking us through that. Now, designing physical products, say D2C products, brands, is different from digital products like SaaS.
Yes.
Now, Adeption is a SaaS platform for learning and development, and it's about experiences, it's about transformation, it's about really helping people unlock the next level through these experiences that we've been creating at Adeption. So maybe a little bit of your perspective around how do you go about doing experience design for SaaS products?
Yep. Yep. So I think you framed it really well, Darshan, in terms of experiences and XD sort of being there's two key aspects. I think there's brand and then there's product. So brand is your overall impression, feeling, emotion toward a brand or organization. The product then is experience as product. And so in our case at Adeption, SaaS product, to your point, that is the large, body of work that we're engaged in on a daily basis is experience as product. So, a couple of examples when we're working with global leaders, talent leaders, we're deploying experiences on the Adeption platform. So the digital platform, we're trying to create, again, quite complex outcomes for leaders. So it might be, to your point, unlocking the next level of potential and performance inside of individuals and organizations. That's a really complex challenge. And how do you get at that outcome, right? So this is where in our work, we really have an interdisciplinary approach to this. So we've got, the lens of bringing in expertise around leadership and human development. So what are the frameworks of what will move leaders to this future state outcome, whether that's unlocking, again, performance potential inside of individuals, organizations, whether that's up-leveling mindset and skill set, that could be something more specific, that could be up-leveling consciousness around unconscious bias and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So it can range, from very broad to very specific, but we look at development as the sort of, key framework there, and how are we going to develop leaders, move them from A to B. And then we build in a lot of sort of interdisciplinary skill sets from writing and content strategy. So how are we going to write and approach the content that a user is going to engage with on the SaaS platform? We look at learning architecture. So it's sort of actually backing up a level. How do we architect a journey for a leader to progress through the digital experience? We look at visual design. We look at creative production, so video content. We look at micro learning tools. What are the sort of the nuggets of inspiration and frameworks that we can provide right at the right moment and give the leader just what they need, but nothing more. So it's kind of this simplicity of design. So these are some of the things that we think about from a SaaS L&D product studio.
Brilliant.
Oh.
Brilliant. You've just walked us through a lot. Maybe you could give an example around a recent example where you've created an experience design, a program for people to move to the next level. Any examples that kind of come to your mind?
Yep. So one of the examples we've deployed recently, it's a global retailer who are working across their organization at all levels. One of the groups we've been working with is their executive group. So these are VPs and above, so very senior leaders in a very large organization. And what we were trying to do at the sort of inception of this design is look at the user base, understand where they're at. And some of the themes that came out of this is they're all, very high achieving, high performing individuals. So they all lead very large organizations in and of themselves within the larger enterprise. So they've got high pressure jobs, very complex sort of matrixed environment, but they're all high achieving. One of the biggest things though that they faced was kind of this sense of lack of connection. So how do I connect with my peers, the other executives that might not be sort of functionally within my business unit, but I know that I need to connect with them to share insights, to get their ideas and to find ways to collaborate. in this, matrix complex environment. So one of the things that we did with this product design is actually look at a blended solution. So how do we bring people together to design sort of synchronous events or synchronous sessions where we can do what we can only do when we're together, and then use the technology to sort of underpin a development journey for them over a period, in this case, of 9 months. And the platform then, the technology was really around helping them zoom out and get clarity and get some new inspiration from their peers and micro-learning tools to help them improve their mindset and skill set in their day-to-day experience. So the digital experience sort of underpinned their 9-month journey through that process. And again, for this level of leader, executive level, they really just need the space to reflect and step back and take a pause. So we designed the digital experience really to be light, in the sense of it's just helping them take a pause, reflect, get clarity. And then we would bring them together every 6 weeks as a cohort. And those cohort sessions were very intentionally designed to, again, help them foster that connection, build relationship across, what might be silos in the organization, and to share new insights. And as simple as that sounds, I think actually some of the simplest designs are the most complicated in our space to really pare something back. But the feedback from this group of executives has been phenomenal. So they're so engaged on the digital journey because it's giving them exactly, again, sort of what they need in their current context. And they're really connected in those live sessions and building relationships, authentic relationships. And that's, I think, going to be part of the legacy of this experience, is those relationships that are developing. And I think with that, we can say that we've done a job well done. So that's one that jumps to mind.
Amazing. You touched upon saying that, man, that looks so simple. Like anyone could do that. But the difference really is in the fine tuning, what you think versus what you do and what actually comes out and the user feels. There's a huge kind of number of iterations that go into it, a lot of thought that goes into it, right? So just on a lighter note, would love to know, when you go through an experience, when you're designing an experience, how many iterations typically you go through in time in refining it and getting it to the point where you can push it in front of the users?
Yeah, no, it's great. I'd say on average, we go through maybe 2 to 4 iterations. And it depends on the project. We've had some very fast, accelerated projects where we're iterating, with our global, we've got a great global team. So we're, iterating across time zones multiple times through the night in, various time zones. And we've got a great global team that supports that. But I would say on average, 2 to 4 iterations, depending on the project, depending on the client. And you hit on, I think you sort of alluded to this as well, but when you're designing, it's particularly in SaaS environments, there's also the managing of relationships and stakeholders and various levels of input. So, we're building an experience or creating that product, but that also there's got to be buy-in internally through various channels. And so that's another big aspect, I would say, of experience design in particular is managing those relationships, managing stakeholders, getting buy-in, influencing, and sharing your best practice. Is that, if you're a practitioner in an experience design space, part of your role in working with clients is to share your expertise and bring your thought leadership to the process, because it is it's a quite a specific field, and it does require skill set and experience to be able to do it. So I kind of went off your iteration question there.
But that was perfect. I'm going to bring in Matt Murphy, who is the Vice President of Customer Success at Adeption, and Mark Watkins, who's the VP of Sales at JumpShift, our sister company, to talk about this buy-in, the sales process, retaining customers? How do you do enterprise sales? I think those are going to be two amazing podcasts with those two guys.
That's awesome.
So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to doing those podcasts with them as well. My last one question to you, Garrett, is the learning and development space has seen a lot of change, especially with digitization, with COVID, with people not flying from one end of the world to the other end of the world for a 3-day or a 5-day, what would you call, learning and development program, right? So that's changed. Humans and corporates around the world have transitioned from being in person to completely digital, being completely okay with digital experience to improve their people. So what are some of the trends that you're seeing either in the experience design space or in the L&D space, or the space combined together?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think I would view it almost combined. So trends in L&D and experience design, creating L&D experiences. So kind of combining those two. I think some of the big trends we're seeing, so this shift to continuous development. So from episodic to continuous development is a big theme we're seeing as we develop our core products, but also as we work with clients at a global level. So to your point, the example you shared, where you get people to go fly in to some, corporate headquarters, give them a 5-day workshop, get a bunch of ideas, and then fly them all back, and they go back to the same sort of context on Monday. It's really hard to embed development in that context because it's very episodic. It's not how humans are designed to sort of learn and grow and develop. It's through practice, it's through experiences, it's through on the job actions. And that happens, again, that spans time. It can't be sort of a one and done. So that's probably one of the biggest shifts we're seeing is moving to creating experiences that are continuous for development. It's not episodic. I think also seeing the role of L&D and talent and internal HR teams is also shifting. So as the context of what they deliver is shifting, so too is their role and our role. And I would say it's actually shifting more to an experience design sort of focus. It's less on being kind of center stage and running workshops and designing these episodic programs, but it's much more designing experiences and ecosystems of development for people inside of organizations. And it's curating the right sets of tools and content for your leaders to engage with at the right moment. But the shift, I think, that's taking place in this space is it's kind of going from front of house to back of house. I used to work in a restaurant when I was in college, so there's sort of front of house, back of house. It's kind of that shift to back of house or back of stage. And having been someone who's been on stages for thousands and thousands of people, there's a certain, level of kind of, self, enjoyment, and I get energized by that space. But I think for L&D in particular, it's viewing our roles actually as stepping back, but that doesn't mean that our impact is shifting. It's actually that we're taking a step to the back of the house to architect these experiences that can have actually much more deep and meaningful and lasting change for the people that we're trying to serve. So those are some of the top themes that we're seeing. So episodic to continuous and experience design becoming sort of the backbone of the space.
Awesome. One last question to you. I probably asked you a last question, but this is a follow-up
That's
to
all
it,
good. Yeah.
Which is, experience design can cause human transformation. This is what in our conversations you keep telling me, right? At a society level, at a global level. COVID kind of exposed some real goodness, but lack of leadership also come through in different parts of the world, right? We are, I think, still in the middle of this crisis. So Any thoughts, any last thoughts around what experience can do for us as a society and, humans altogether?
Yeah, I think it can create this better world where we are able to solve some of the complex challenges that we have and thrive at an individual and collective level. That's my optimist view of the space and what we can do. There's this great quote by David Brooks from a book called The Second Mountain. I'll read it, and I think it captures the essence of this human transformation. So he says, every once in a while, I meet a person who radiates joy. These people who seem to glow with an inner light. They're kind, tranquil, delighted by small pleasures, and grateful for the large ones. These people are not perfect. They get exhausted and stressed. They make errors in judgment, but they live for others and not for themselves. They make unshakable commitments to a family, a cause, a community, or a faith. They know why they're put on this earth and derive a deep sense of satisfaction from doing what they've been called to do. Life isn't always easy for these people. They've taken on the burdens of others, but they have a serenity about them, a settled resolve. They're interested in you, make you feel cherished and known, and take delight in your good. And for me, that, it captures kind of this sense of, I don't know anybody who doesn't want to kind of live like that or live with people like that or lead with an organization full of people like that have this commitment to themselves and to other people and making the world a better place. And I think human development and transformation can sort of meet squarely in the middle of all of that. And I think it's our responsibility too, for those of us in this space, to commit to this work and commit to this, this global movement. So I'm excited for the next, years and decades to come and see how this all shakes out. But I think the opportunity is immense.
Absolutely. The potential is there. Can we convert this potential into something, impact that can change lives, right? And that's what we are aiming to do at Adeption. So this has been an awesome podcast, Garrett. Thanks a lot for coming on. So thanks a lot for tuning in. Thanks a lot, Garrett, again, and have a great day.
Thanks,